All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're back. Did you miss us? Of course you did. It's been a whole week. What would you do? What would you do if we actually missed an episode? You'd be without Kelvin and Josh for a week, and that would be a terrible thing. We try not to do that to you ever.
I've known people who've had to go to therapy because they just couldn't get to the podcast for that time. They just missed us so much.
I think you might be exaggerating in that one, but hey, we'll take it.
I call it poetic license.
Kelvin, how you doing?
I'm doing good. You know, we keep telling our audience that we have a conversation before we actually get to the podcast part.
Yeah.
I think what's going to start happening is we just need to start recording the minute we turn our computers on and just package that, put some music on it, play it later. Because here it is, where I am right now. It's 1 p.m. We started at 10:30. We've been talking for an hour and a half.
No, that 2.5.
Math was never my strong point. We've been talking for 10:30. See, 11:30, 12:30. Oh my gosh. Yeah, well, who said that literacy is necessary for a good podcast? But anyway, I'm doing fine. I'm in a great mood right now. I've been talking to you for 2.5 hours, and what's not good about that?
Right?
How about you?
I'm good. I still got a little bit of remnants of that cold that I had last week, but you know, I'm not deep sexy over here again.
We appreciate that.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure what I was going to do with that.
And you know, it's everybody's birthday this week. My wife had a birthday last week. When this comes out, it'll be a week and a half ago. And then my brother-in-law and my brother also in the same week. And it's milestone birthdays for everybody.
Really?
I'll just say they're all 25 again.
All right.
But yeah, so by the time y'all have heard this, we'll have already been there, done that. But we got everybody coming up, big party, cake, ice cream. Had our favorite guy around the corner put together a catering package for us so that I don't have to cook.
Cool.
And we're looking forward to it.
Well, have fun. Don't call the cops. Stay orderly and so forth.
Those are two different things.
What, orderly and so forth?
No. Staying orderly and don't call the cops.
Oh, got it. Okay.
Yeah. You know, it turns out if you just invite everybody, nobody calls the cops.
Interesting.
Or you're less likely to have the cops called if everybody's over. You know, like you saw when you were here. You know, we had our housewarming when you came, and we got a bunch of neighbors over, and everybody was like, "Wow, thank you for inviting us." I'm like, "Yeah, have the new guys come, move into the house, have all their friends block the street.
Mm-hmm.
That's a good way to meet your neighbors."
And not only that,
they came over, they had a good time, they were running around the yard. Yeah.
And you didn't ask them to work. They just showed up for a party.
Yeah.
That was nice.
They had to swat some flies, but we have since screened in that porch.
Well, they live in Savannah.
Well, we figured out why they call this area town Sandfly. Whew.
Oh, do you? So, figuring out any protective strategies for those? Oh yeah, we
screened it in the porch.
Screened in the porch. But the barbecue grill is normally outside.
Yeah, but all I got to do is cover it and run it inside the porch. All I got to do is cover the food and run it inside the porch.
Okay, there you go. Well, when's your next party?
After today.
I
I don't know. When are you coming?
let me get back to you on that.
All right.
I'm trying to.
Well, whatever you do,
I'm trying to get to Australia in between now and my next visit to you.
Okay.
So, yeah, got a dear friend over there. I've been promising to come see them for a while, and pretty soon they're going to start to think that I'm either senile or lying. And we can't have either of those be the case.
No, that's true.
So I'll keep you posted.
You talk to me for a few hours a week, you might be going a little crazy. It'll do that to a guy. Well, for sure, if you come here, in addition to the copious amounts of coffee and the
walking and
reasonable quantities of beer we consume, that we will probably be drinking some kettle and fire bone broth in the morning. So you can join us. Go over to kettleandfire.com, fill up your box with all kinds of bone broth and soups. Hey, autumn's coming. I know it's getting cooler here in Savannah, which never happens, but
really,
it's been cool already. Soup weather indeed. Fill up your box. Go to the checkout. Use code BetterHumanHood. Get 10% off your order. That's kettleandfire.com. Use code BetterHumanHood at checkout for 10% off your order. And man, was that a rough transition into an ad, but now we're out of it.
It was good. I was impressed with it.
I saw the shock on your face.
That was really creative.
I was like, we should probably get a read in here somewhere.
Yeah, the neighbors showed up, came on over, woke up the next morning, and we gave them kettle and fire bone broth. Yeah. So that's good. So we should probably play some music now.
Yeah.
Right.
Podcast, where we talk about better humanhood and teach you how to dominate your world. You ready? Here we go. Now, I always feel like that's the most awkward part of the podcast because we don't hear the music. You add that later. So we just stare at each other for a minute and go, like, who's going to start talking?
Mm-hmm.
Somebody's going to start talking. What's a reasonable pause here? Is there enough time to remember to put the music in here?
But we always make it.
Yeah, it does happen.
We always make it. So, because when you're doing post production work, you can create a pause anywhere you want to.
It's true.
So if you start saying something, you're babbling, and you're doing it really fast, I could put in a pause. And people will think it's a purposeful pause for effect. And then just reconnect the other half of your voice. I can overlap them. I can do all kinds of things. I can cut out my babble.
You remember episode 1? I reserve the right to change.
I do.
You remember that conversation about that CD? One thing
Oh, yes.
I'm reasonably proud of on that CD that I put together, and let's be clear, my brother produced the thing. He engineered
you told me
it.
that before.
He's the anything I'm proud of on there, he did. But I wanted a really creepy underlay to one of the songs. So what we did was we laid down the music track,
mm-hmm.
and then we reversed the music track and ran the whole song backward underneath the song. So it goes in both directions.
That was creepy.
And I was really proud of that idea.
Oh, I really think you should bring that back and sell them. I mean, I realize that doesn't represent who you are anymore, but hey.
Yeah, I'll go back and listen and see if I can figure out which track. I'm sure I can figure out which track that was. And if it's any good, maybe I'll put it up on SoundCloud and drop it in the
There you go.
But no promises.
Option. And who knows, they may be excessively impressed with your brother's mixing and want to hire him for a really good gig.
Yeah, and he's doing some good stuff.
Saw that.
He's got a new score out, and it's fantastic. I'll put that link in the show notes because, it's one thing for me to be able to go, hey man, good job. I like to uplift my brother when I can. And for so long, he was such a everything was such a pessimistic grind for him.
Mm-hmm.
That when I could give him a little boost, I tried. And this piece that he did, this piece of scoring he did, was so honestly gorgeous that it immediately brought back to me this moment. He moved from Massachusetts to Los Angeles in 2003.
Mm-hmm.
And, he needed his car out there, so I drove with him.
Yeah.
And when we hit the Rockies, I don't know if you've been through the Rockies, if any of our listeners have been through the Rockies, but they're breathtakingly gorgeous. We were there in early May, so there was still snow on them, but the season was starting to change. And we put on Peter Gabriel's score from The Passion, which is just a beautiful, majestic hour of music.
Mm-hmm.
And it's also coincidentally the score to a movie. And just the music juxtaposed over the scenery.
Mm-hmm.
3 days of driving all the way across the country. I think we calculated 2,200 miles.
Uh-huh.
That was the only hour that no words passed.
Wow.
Between us. I think we were just listening and looking. And this score that he did was very reminiscent. Just turning on the speakers for the first time,
mm-hmm.
Immediately was reminiscent of that moment for
awesome.
me. So it's that kind of beautiful.
Oh. I'm going to have to click this link on my desktop and go listen to that.
Yeah. Give yourself a little bit of silence before so that you can shake whatever you had in your head, especially if what you've had in your head is me babbling at you for 3 hours.
You don't babble, Josh.
I wasn't fishing. I babbled, man.
Oh, my gosh. Wow. Well, there you go, boss. So,
Josh, you don't babble. It just took you 10 minutes to tell me how nice you liked that piece of music your brother wrote, but you don't babble.
That wasn't babbling. That was heartfelt expression. That's different. And you weren't like crying, going, "Oh, I love you, man. This is really great music." You were just talking about, and you compared it to other music. So.
I mean, get 8 ounces of bourbon or so in me, and have the same conversation. There might be a little.
Yeah, that's different. And then you can go to that float tank you took me to.
That's right.
So anyway, I think we've told the listeners before that very often we have great conversations before the podcast, and then because Josh doesn't like scripting, then we figure out what we're going to talk about. Well, today, I don't think we figured it out yet.
Right. Well, okay. It's not just a problem if I don't like scripting, because I don't mind. I don't mind planning. Hey, we're going to talk about this day, that day. But I like to have the conversation naturally, because if we script it, if we have the conversation and then we record the podcast after, we don't have natural reactions to each other.
Well, half the time we have to bleep out our natural reactions anyway.
Yeah, but
okay, I see.
Yeah, like a lot of times we say, "Hey, what we're going to talk about today," and we decide 5 minutes before the podcast, which is why we usually talk for an hour and a half. But today we talked for 2.5 hours. But
yeah, we covered a lot of weeks of podcasting.
We had some ideas, and we kind of chucked them out the window for later, or not out the window. I guess we kind of tossed them into
the editorial calendar.
Yeah, into that, into the pot for later that you'll get to hear those. And we just decided to talk because we've just kind of been chatting for a while.
It is.
You reading or listening to anything interesting? And listening, music or audiobooks or podcasts, or what are you putting in your skull that is resonating with you?
I went to a party recently, and a friend of mine who has a lot of motivational stuff showed up with some old stuff that I'm kind of going back through. You've heard me talk about, the new Psycho-Cybernetics, what they call it, mind technology for living your life without limits, right? And it just so happens he had an old Nightingale-Conant program with a bunch of CDs, and I'm like, you do know, of course, that this is the age where cars don't have CDs anymore. I bet that's why.
Mine does, but it's an old car.
And an old set by Tony Robbins, and really, seriously, I can never get enough of Tony Robbins. But lately, I've been mostly doing a lot of self-reflection because things in my life they're not bad, but I'm not really where I thought I was going to be right now, and so it's caused me to spend some time going internally and going, okay, so what is it you're going to do here? Because, I've got goals. I've got the effects I want to have on the world. I've got people I want to help and or affect. I've got things I want to do, and they're just right now not getting done. So I'm in this weird place where I'm perched between not really happy with where I'm going with, oh my God, in another 20 seconds, I can be like in this space doing all this stuff. And things happen this is not actually answering the question of what I'm reading. I'm not really reading much. I'm just started going through old stuff. But something will happen. Someone will come up with a problem, and we'll have a 2-hour coaching session. And when I get done, they'll say, "Oh, that was awesome. Thank you. I really needed that." And I'm like, that's the guy I'm trying to get out talking to the world. Me. That guy who forgot what I wasn't happy with and focused my time, my attention on helping someone else figure out a conundrum that they were in. So a lot of times what's hitting my mind these days is when I'm helping someone else, and as usually what happens in my life, as my words are bouncing off of them and coming back to me, I go, oh, yeah, that's what I'm missing. And they go off and live happily ever after. And I go, okay, let's go start that now. Let's go redo that. So nothing in particular, except going back over some really good quotes. I do have one book next to me called, it's a book of quotes, really. It's called "It Always Seems Impossible Until It's Done." And there's some really good quotes in it. That particular quote, as it turns out, was from Mr. Mandela. So we have just things, and even in my vitamin K that I've been writing recently, because I love to talk. But for the last week, this week, instead of doing a large, episode on or issues on my thoughts, what I've done is included some quotes, some memes that I've run across that mean a lot to me, and then having actually my audience there kind of reflect on those and say, how does this apply to your life? What are you doing that aligns with this kind of thing? And I found that to be very reflective, because every once in a while, I just have to reflect. You need to see what you're doing, see how you're doing it, and go, okay, where am I? Somebody said to me once, though, that a GPS is worthless inside a parked car. So I don't know if that answered the question, Mr. Shear, but that's kind of where life is.
Sure. How are you undertaking the reflection? Are you sitting in silence? Are you using some specific meditation form? Are you sitting staring at your computer going, I should do something?
No, I've got a couple of friends who I talk with. As much as I'm a life coach, I've got people in my life who serve as life coaches, and they help me to think through my thoughts. Because sometimes, I got a quote from my son recently, my baby boy, that said, "It is often difficult to see that which we are encased in." And in other ways, Les Brown said, it's hard to see the picture when you're inside the frame, So I've been just kind of reflecting on where I am. So they've helped me, and I've got a couple. I have a very limited group of advisors or coaches as far as that's concerned. And I don't just open it up to the but a lot of my reflection is personal, is quietly sitting and meditating. I do like to write. I discovered a practice years ago where I could just sit down and start writing. I call it automatic writing.
Right on.
Sit down and start writing, and whatever comes to my mind, I'm writing on a paper. It is amazing what comes out of the head and onto the paper when you're just writing, because your pure thoughts come out, and you don't even necessarily notice what they are until you go back later and read the paper. And it's a great way to find out what's happening in your head. And I have enjoyed that practice, taught that practice over time. So some of that's going on. It's where am I really going? And sometimes I ask myself some tough questions, and then go back and answer my tough questions, because the reality is life is good. Life is excellent. I complain sometimes, but there's a whole lot of people in a whole lot worse place than I am. So
for sure,
my life is just kind of inconvenient. It's not devastating. It's just not as energized as I'd like it. And I am the Prince of Positive, so this is not a place I get to stay. This place where I'm teetering on the on the point. But somebody said the other day that I was human, and I'm like, watch your mouth. Don't be talking. So introspective. And occasionally I meditate. I do enjoy the meditations. Just I don't do that right now. Right now I just sit quietly and let the thoughts run through.
Well, and that's a type of meditation. I mean, that's very much the sort of meditation I do, is just sit and let thoughts wander in and then wander out, rather than trying to grab that thought and expound on it.
Sometimes it's just interesting to see what trips through. Like, where did that come from? Why? Wow. Amazing stuff. So I'm like, didn't know that was a problem. Okay, thank you. It's nice seeing you. Yeah. Write that down. How about you? What's going on for your reflective times and stuff?
Well, my reflective time is frequently interrupted, of course, with the baby. But,
yes, you do have that.
Today we're recording on Thursday, the 29th of August, and today was 90 straight days that I've managed a 10 or 15 minute meditation.
Nice.
Sometimes I'll use the guided meditation, but most times I won't. For the first 30 days I use the guided, but after that I mostly use the unguided. And if I find myself kind of wandering too much, or if I find myself being like I would rather be doing something else, I'll switch it to the guided so that I'm in it. I use the Oak app, which is, I believe at this time, only available for iPhone, but it doesn't come with all that extra stuff that Calm and Headspace come with. So it suits me well. I've also started being conscious about my phone.
Oh?
For the past year or so, iPhone's operating system has a screen time thing. It lets you know how long you've been on it and what you're using. So when I find myself using Facebook and Instagram too much, if I'm just opening and scrolling mindlessly, I just take the apps off my phone. And right now they're on my phone and not sucking my attention. I was away from my wife for about a week. She was in Colorado visiting a friend. So I actually opened up screen time this morning. It said my most used app over the last week was Messages. We're texting back and forth. My second most used was Kindle, which means I was reading.
Right.
My third most used was FaceTime. We were FaceTiming a lot, and Facebook and Instagram weren't even in the top 10. Whatever's on the first screen. So, I'm averaging, I think, under an hour and a half on my phone a day, and if most of that is connecting with people and reading, I'm very good with that.
Awesome.
It means that I'm taking stuff in. The book I'm reading right now on Kindle is Bob Woodward's book on the first few months of the Trump administration. Journalistically, it's interesting. Nothing that didn't hit the news, or very little that didn't hit the news. In some way, shape, or form. But interesting seeing where we were 2 years ago, and seeing where we are now. And then the other book that I've been reading, the other two books, I've been reading Flow, which is we've talked about flow a lot before, but it was the original study by Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi, and then I've been reading *Sapiens* by Yuval Noah Harari.
That's bringing a picture to mind.
It's like a huge book called A Brief History of Mankind.
Oh, what?
Or of human beings.
800 pages or something like that?
Oh, about 450.
Close enough.
Let's say I'm not sure that he's got a grasp of what brief means, because I'm pretty sure it's about 3 times as long as Stephen Hawking's A Brief History of Time, and time is a whole lot longer than humans.
Wow. Well, there you go. Any interesting insights from that?
Well, it's interesting in seeing our capabilities for innovation and our capabilities for destruction. We made it, we being Homo sapiens, human beings, and there were, like, Neanderthals were human beings. They just were a different species. There were several different species of human beings, and Homo sapiens are the ones that made it. We made it to Australia 45,000 years ago.
Really?
We made it to North America 14,000 years ago. And we made it to North America by crossing the Bering Land Bridge, the piece of water that is currently in between Siberia and Alaska. During an age about 14,000 years ago, that water had receded enough to walk across, and that's how humans got to North America.
How they
and then they spread. Well, they probably walked off the. Oh, you mean now? How we?
Yeah.
There are probably records, paintings and drawings, and.
Oh, I was going to say you had a Bureau of Vital Statistics from that.
And then they spread into South America from there. But the bigger question there is how we came about in Africa, Middle East, like that area of the world. How we kind of grew up there, and then figured out how to survive in Siberia to get across. But we made it to Australia 45,000 years ago. That's 30,000 years before we made it to North America, which means they figured out how to build a thing that floats, could carry people, and then they managed to replicate getting over to Australia, because they probably didn't just show up in a boat with 5,000 people on it. And they not only did it have to be a boat, like it wasn't like a little raft that you tied together to get across a still lake or something. They had to do the ocean. So they got to Australia, and within 2,000 years of their arrival, all the megafauna were gone. All the megafauna, all the big animals, like they had. Yeah, they didn't have dinosaurs, but they had huge animals. Everywhere we went, big animals went extinct. Mastodons are gone, saber-toothed tigers are gone, megalodons are gone, just everything gone. But particularly land animals, which means that we were hunting, and we were hunting things that were much bigger than us. And we still have elephants, which means that the things we were hunting were much bigger than elephants.
Wow.
And we still have giraffes.
And we didn't even have guns.
And no. Correct.
Yeah, I want to see how that worked. I'm getting the feeling that a rock and a slingshot wasn't going to do it.
Well, I mean, that's what a bow and arrow is, right? It's just a sharpened rock and something that propels it pretty far, pretty fast, and that's what a spear is without the sling, right? It's just a sharpened rock that we throw, attached to a stick for a little bit of aerodynamics and grip. It's
you had to figure that out.
Yeah, like we figured that out, and we figured out well enough that we managed to wipe out species within a couple of millennia.
I think we're dangerous.
Maybe, but we also have the capacity of for love and caring and fixing the world too. Meanwhile, if you were if you were like an 8,000-pound cat with 14-foot tusks, then, I mean, really, what were you good for besides destruction? Even now, I mean, what's a tiger good for? Stuff, right?
Running around eating stuff.
Yeah. Bears, too. They just go around, they eat stuff.
I'm still trying to imagine how we take care of those without guns now. But they're still doing it with spears and stuff over the
some
traps.
Places, sure. Well, except the places they're doing it with traps and spears and stuff, they're losing people.
Yeah, well. Yeah, that's they were losing people anyway, I think. So
yeah.
Well, those are certainly interesting books to read. So,
but and we can talk about this maybe on a future episode. But one of the things that I got out of it the most was our love of, well, not our love for, our need for shared myths.
Shared myths?
Yeah, and that's how society gets built. There's no science behind things like national borders and property and money. Like, those are all myths that we share and that we all buy into for the sake of society. Like, we have agreed that structure that you're sitting in is a house that you own, and that if anybody enters it uninvited, they're committing a crime against society. Like, there's no scientific law that requires that. It's not like if you let go of a pen, it's going to fall. Gravity exists. It's
right.
You have to do something to counter gravity. Like, if we all just stopped believing in gravity, it would still be here.
Correct.
Yeah, but we've agreed to share these myths for the benefit of a productive society. Yeah, we agree on what words mean. We agree on the alphabet. We agree on a lot of different things. And none of them...
Laterally, I mean, we got because we got a lot of different languages, and we got...
right. But...
within a region, anyway.
Yeah. But in order to make a society survive, we need to adopt shared myths.
Interesting word.
We go, and you can use the word like fiction, but it's not a truth, right? It's just
an agreement.
Something that somebody created and passed along to somebody else, and they said, yeah, that's a good idea. We can build a society around that. And if you can uphold those myths for long enough, then you've got, you might have a nation on your hands.
Mm.
And, we get so attached to our myths that sometimes we're willing to go kill people who have different shared myths just for the sake of the myths.
Interesting point of view. Substantiated, and we see it daily.
Yeah.
And strangely enough, the territorial boundaries get smaller. I mean, people have their, you mentioned the house. Yeah, this is my territory right here.
Right.
And yeah, interesting. Points to ponder.
But to call those myths, which is what he does,
mm-hmm.
When I think of, when I say the word myth, I don't know what it conjures for you. For me, the first thing it conjures is the ancient religions I learned about. We learned about like Greek myths and Roman myths, mm-hmm. and every faith has an origin myth. That everybody's got an origin story. How the world was founded. So I think of those things as myths, and those are certainly myths that we agreed upon. But
I'll tell you what Webster says about myths.
Okay.
Webster says a usually traditional story of ostensibly historical events that serves to unfold part of the world view of a people or explain a practice, belief, or natural phenomenon.
Sure.
Man, that was a mouthful. But yeah, moral responsibility is the motive of Plato's myths, he says. So there you go. I learned a new word. Back in my day, it was like myth. That was just like a story that wasn't based.
Well, and that's what it is, right? I mean, even if we talk about money, we're talking about a myth. Here's we create a story about this currency that has a value,
mm-hmm.
and the reason it has value is because we agree that it has value.
Everybody bought into it,
yeah, and it made for a very convenient intermediary. If I had goats and I needed some plumbing and you were a plumber, but you didn't need goats, then there was no way for me to get plumbing until we had money. So, or we had to kind of find some comment that we needed to find a guy who needed goats who mm-hmm. had the thing that you wanted and do a three-way trade, do a three-way barter. Yep. But once we came up with money, I could just give you currency to do the plumbing, and then you could take that currency and go get whatever you wanted with it, right. Or whatever you needed with it.
Yeah, when did money come up? Well, actually, that was back in ancient everything. So
I was saying it's old, but it's a myth that we agree upon.
Right.
There's no intrinsic value unless we give it value.
Yep. That's a whole interesting concept. I mean, that just gives us a whole new perspective for everyday life in general.
Yeah. Yep. That's very much what it did for me, was to say, oh, all this stuff you think it's not really real.
Mm-hmm.
You can touch it, but you can touch your walls, but that doesn't prove the concept of a house or property or mortgages or anything like that. All it proves is that there's a wall here.
Interesting concepts, Mr. Shear. You gave me something else to think about.
Sorry. I know how you hate extra things to think about.
Oh, man, I hate extra things to think about. You know, and if it didn't make sense, it would be better. I could just blow it off, you know. But it explains, I actually having that all be explained by being a myth, because that's not my previous definition of myth. So, you know, a couple of years ago when I was going through MKMMA, when we were reading all this material that Mark and the guys gave us, for those who don't know, you know, the Master Key Mastermind Alliance, excellent experience that I went through a couple of years ago. 6 months of a mastermind. It was quite mind expanding, whether you bought into everything they said or not. But it's sometimes the biggest thing about life is we have so many things going on in our lives. This is a small tangent that we accept as reality that we don't really think about. We just accept it as that, and we don't really delve into, like, is this relevant? Does this make sense? Anything like that. So the biggest thing about the mastermind, Master Key Mastermind Alliance, is you got to actually think about things in your life and your beliefs and everything and go, okay, does this make sense? What's the reality? What is the result of this thing I'm thinking? Is it real, or is it something I've just put together? And is it a myth that's not real? But at any rate, during that whole process, just having them taking the time to find out what it is you believe and why is one of the biggest things we as people don't do. We have a lot of things that have just been handed down to us that we hold on to as sacred and truth that there's not necessarily any basis for.
Right.
But it's reality, quote unquote, to us. But one of the things they did was say, when you're reading this stuff, have a dictionary handy. Because
make sure
you're going to
you
read something.
What words mean.
Yeah, and it's not going to have the meaning you think it has. So part of communication is understanding what does that really mean. And that was, man, I spent 6 weeks with a dictionary. My phone had a dictionary on it. There was a lot of stuff that you had to challenge. Actually challenges what you think is the meaning in reality. So that was eye-opening, and that's a thought-expanding thing all on its own.
Yeah, and I mean, you touched on it, but we're definitely all hanging on to myths that we don't see as myths, we hold as absolute truth. And if we just step back and understand that it's merely a myth that we'd agreed to, that we could agree to a different myth, or we could allow at least for somebody else's belief.
Right. That would be instrumental for humanhood around the globe.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like that was an important piece of the conversation, but I also feel like it totally deflated the let's bounce around and talk about a bunch of different things that we had going on.
Well, you know, that's been the premise of every talk we've ever had.
Yeah.
It all started out somewhere.
They're all real interesting, and eventually they end up somewhere, and then we have to
really important.
And then we had to think about it and eventually just say, whew, I think I need a week to let that process. And
so our podcast should be the journey you start, but you never know where it's going to end. Yeah.
That's right.
So, yeah, like they say, GPS is no good in a parked car. So if we're not moving, we're not thinking, right?
That's right. So I guess we got there wherever it was we were going.
Wherever we were going.
Yeah, we can.
I'm happy with that for now.
Now that we found the destination, we can turn the GPS on and see how it wants us to get there.
Now we need to turn it on and find out how to get back to where we were.
That's right. We took the long way here. Let's take the short way home.
Yeah, let's do that.
Kettleandfire.com. Use code BetterHumanhood at checkout for 10% off. That's kettleandfire.com. Code BetterHumanhood at checkout for 10% off. JKWDpodcast.com for show notes. VitaminKDaily.com for your daily dose of positive. And we will see you next time.
Bye-bye.
Hey, thanks for listening. Show notes and more at jkwdpodcast.com. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share with your friends, and we will see you next week. Bye. A Better Humanhood production.